What's up, everybody, and welcome to an all-new episode of Casters of Horror. I'm Chris Mess.
I'm Shane, and this week we're breaking down Pearl, an extraordinary horror origin story.
Orgy story.
Orgy story.
Yeah,
That's more like the first movie.
Yeah, that was more like X, the first one. But anyway, before we get into our review of the film, we got a little bit of movie news. I think I decided to just do away with the original sound and just go with movie news. I think it's just better that way. Anyway, first bit of movie news that we got here. The real Amityville house is once again up for sale.
All right.
The Dutch colonial house that inspired the book, The Amityville Horror, is back on the market. It was original asking price for it was $1.45 million last year.
I like money.
Wow.
Then they dropped it to 1.35. The current owners say that they're going through a divorce and selling the property, and it has nothing to do with the structure being haunted at all. They've now dropped down the price to $955,000. But they're very adamant. The house is not haunted.
Yeah.
We had wonderful times in that house, they said. And I never felt anything whatsoever. It's not haunted.
Yeah.
So anyway, so if you're up to it, it's 112 Ocean Avenue.
And so, you know what? The fact that address is just so publicly known, that's the most haunting thing about it.
Yeah.
That would be the annoying thing about living in that house is just all the people, driving by it or wanting to come up to it and see it and stuff like that,
Yep. Oh, look at this. Now they've changed the address of it, though. It was 112 Ocean Avenue. They've now changed it to 108 Ocean Avenue. Odd.
Okay.
Very, very odd.
Huh.
Well, anyway, if you're interested in a new property venture, there you go. Amityville house. Check it out. I mean, I would love to check it out. You know, I want to go to the house, or not the house, but the hotel where The Shining was. My wife's actually been there. She's been there.
Really?
Yeah, she took a tour of it and everything.
I'd love to go there. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, stay in it. We've got a Casters of Horror favorite up in this piece here. On this new one, Terrifier 2 star David Howard Thornton.
Yeah.
Had a trailer for a new film come out this week. Atlas Film Distribution is going to be unleashing The Mean One.
Nice.
Which is the Grinch slasher movie.
Yeah.
Where David, who played Art the Clown in Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 1, he's going to be playing the Grinch. It's let's see. It was directed by Stephen Lemorte, whatever, The Death, whatever. But anyway, it's looking to hit U.S. cinemas December 9th. But the trailer just came out. So it's going to follow the story about young Cindy Lou, whose parents were butchered by the Mean One 20 Christmases earlier.
Oh my gosh.
So the Grinch is a killer. So
I'll absolutely watch that. I've seen the poster. I haven't seen the trailer.
I haven't watched the trailer yet either, but Bloody Disgusting does have the trailer up on their site if you want to check it out, or you can look it up on YouTube. But our good friends over at Bloody Disgusting, they have it up over there. So check it out.
Yeah, that was a funny curiosity to me of a movie until I found out it was going to be David Howard Thornton. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah,
I feel like I want to watch it now.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out now.
Yeah,
for sure. But Let's see. I think that's it, man. Oh, and we've got that Winnie the Pooh movie coming out too soon, which is you know,
Yeah.
they're going back to some of these classics,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I think
I'm
that's pretty
ready.
cool.
I'm ready for a Flintstones one.
Yeah. Hey, give it time.
Yeah, give it time.
Give it
They'll do it.
time.
I actually, you know what I want to see? I want to see a really, really good. I mean, James Gunn did it really well, but I want to see a really, really dark, messed up Scooby Doo. I
Oh.
would love it. I would love it. It's like Scooby
Huh.
Doo meets like I Know What You Did Last Summer. Kind of mash those together.
Yeah.
I'd dig it. Which I mean,
Scooby is an interesting one because that series has been through so many iterations. Like, I'm surprised there hasn't been,
yeah,
some sort of like super. I mean, because like even some of the cartoons, man. Years ago, my kid was watching one, and I'm used to Scooby Doo being like, oh, they unmask the monster, and it's
the
Mister.
only Mr. Crowley.
Yeah,
the only other
yeah,
guy that was in the show. Yeah.
yeah. But like this one, like they're like summoning like a Cthulhu cult or something, and it's like this, like what happened to this show?
Yeah. Well, I know that they did a comic book series about like the end of the world, like the apocalypse, basically. But
Okay,
like all these zombies had taken over, and it was like this really dark, messed up version of Scooby Doo. And I'd love to see. I'd love to see that.
I will say the show Supernatural did a Scooby Doo episode.
Did they?
Yeah, where basically the main characters get transported into. It's a cartoon episode. They get transported into a Scooby Doo episode.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so basically you go through the thing of the Scooby Doo cast actually realizing that all these things they chase after are actually real, and so
That's
it's
awesome.
yeah, it was actually a pretty fun episode.
I never watched Supernatural.
Yeah,
Never watched one episode of it. I need to at some point.
yeah, I like that. I watched all the way through.
Very cool.
I'm one of those people that say if you can somehow even manage to get through 15 seasons, don't watch the very last episode, because the next to last episode is a fantastic series finale, and then they did another episode after that just, in my opinion, ruined the whole thing. But
They're like,
whatever.
let's just wrap this whole thing up
Yeah.
with a nice little bow.
Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I had this week for movie news. So, are you ready to jump into this film, sir?
Yes, let's talk Pearl.
Oh, let's talk Pearl. So, Pearl was written and directed. Well, it was written by both Ty West and Mia Goth, and it was directed by Ty West. A lot of people didn't know that this film was coming out. I know I didn't when he was releasing X. Ty West also did The Innkeepers. I had his IMDb page pulled up, and now it's gone. I accidentally closed it out. Awesome. Oops. Well done, me. But anyway, he did Innkeepers. He did I have it here. Come on. X, House of the Devil. I should have remembered that one. Let's see. Wayward Pines, In the Valley of Violence, which was a Western. The Sacrament, ABCs of Death. VHS, one of the segments from that. Cabin Fever 2. And some short films. Triggerman, The Roost, The Wicked.
He did Wayward Pines? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, he did 2 episodes of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He also did an episode of The Exorcist, the TV series. Did a lot of TV stuff also. Anyway, he's filming another movie called Maxine, but it's got 3 X's. He's kind of got this thing for X's, doesn't he?
Yeah. That's
and it's Mia Goth.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the sequel to X, right?
Oh yeah. Because that was her name, wasn't it, Maxine? Yeah. Okay. Cool. But anyway, it was Pearl, of course, is played by Mia Goth, who played Pearl, which a lot of people didn't know, in X.
I didn't. I
which
had
was
no idea.
the old lady.
Yeah.
But she also played Maxine in it,
Yeah.
which was one of the main characters. Anyway, this movie to me, like I described it in the last episode, is like the film Oklahoma with some horror elements
With blood.
Yeah, with blood, basically. If like old Jeb went and killed somebody in the middle of Oklahoma or something, that's what it'd be like. So picture like painted backgrounds, big epic scenes and stuff like that.
Everything from, and that seems to be intentional, right? I mean, that's got to be intentional.
Very much.
Because from the title cards to even the style of music, I would say even some of the shots, that are shown, it's like, this is very much meant to evoke,
from the very, very opening. Yeah. I mean, because the very, very first shot that we get is from the inside of a barn with this like sweeping orchestra type music where it's you see the barn doors opening and then you get a shot of the farmhouse up on that we've seen in X, and it's just up on this open veranda, and they actually filmed this at the same time that they were filming X.
I thought I had heard that.
Yeah, and they were kind of filming it on the down low, so nobody knew that it was coming out.
That's funny.
So anyway, we get this shot of the farmhouse. Pearl is inside. She's getting herself fancied up in the mirror, and then she proceeds to dance as the music's going on. The lights dim down. It's though she's in some sort of fantasy daydream of being a star.
Which is another classic cinematic thing that used to happen all the time in those old films.
Oh yeah.
So this is very much an intentional throwback to that era of movie history.
Yeah, this is a fantastically shot film. Every bit of what's done in this is very, very intentional as far as cinematically, and I loved it.
It's very much like those older movies. It's very theatrical in the sense of like a stage play type things.
Yep.
And
even
how
even the way that they talked and everything is very Mia Goth, of course, from X. She was also in the Suspiria remake. She was in the remake of Emma, which was it Charlotte Bronte? Was it Bronte? Who did? I forgot. It'll come to me later. Anyway, Emma. She also did Nymphomaniac Volume 2, which is where she met her later future husband, Shia LaBeouf, who she ended up divorcing, but as of this year, they have a kid. Anyway, it's on again, off again. So anyway, as she's going through this daydream and fantasy, everything, her mother barges in the door. Boom.
Yeah.
She's a hard woman, a German woman. Anyway, she's played by Tandy Wright. She's actually a New Zealand actress. She was in the film Love and Monsters, Creamery, Jack and the Giant Slayer, and The Returned. She says to Pearl, who said you could wear one of my old dresses? Go change, feed the animals, blah, blah, blah. So she has work to do. There's no time to dance about.
Yeah.
So, and we see this become a very, very big pattern in it.
Yeah.
Her mother's even speaking to her in German and all this.
Yeah.
Pearl heads to the barn with her overalls on, storms out there. And she starts talking to the animals about how one day she's going to leave the farm and become a big star. And she talks to each of the animals as though they're her only friends in the world.
Yeah.
And she has a thick Southern accent.
Thick she does.
Anyway,
which is it's pretty funny because her mom has the very obvious German.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So where she got this accent from could have been her dad. Could have been. I guess my kid has a Southern accent. I don't believe I do.
No, you don't.
So Pearl heads to the barn. blah, blah. She's dancing around in there and all this. She's like, I'm going to be a big star. And she gets up on the hay and all this and has a pitchfork and a goose comes strolling into the barn. And she's like, what are you doing in here, Mr. Goose? And he's kind of like interrupting her show almost.
Yeah.
And he's like, wah, wah, wah.
And he just like, the thing just like walks in and like stares right at her. It's so weird.
Yeah. And she walks up to it with the pitchfork and just stabs it.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow. Okay. So we're now seeing that Pearl's fairly brutal.
Yeah.
And she's...
Yeah, but, at this point, she could just be taking care of a pest.
She could be.
Know?
However, she goes out and takes the goose to her pet, almost, alligator that lives out in the pond, which we did meet in X. And she feeds it. She calls for it. And as soon as the alligator comes and jumps up out of the water, it freezes while she's holding the thing there. And you see the big title screen come across, Pearl, in very ornate letters, and the music. And then we get another shot of the farmhouse. It's night, and we see that it's the year 1918.
Yeah.
So
we're right in the throes of World War One. Right?
Yes.
And then also the pandemic, the flu pandemic.
Yes.
Right. So
influenza.
Yeah.
Her mother and her are preparing dinner, and her mother kind of chidles her about, I wanted to use that word. I really did. I was like, that's the word that came up, about the foolishness of her dreams, basically. And her daydreaming and whatnot, and how it's all just a bunch of foolishness. And her mother tells her to go get her father for supper, and Pearl sees a newspaper about the war and it's how it's possibly ending, and her mother says, I don't want any more speak of dead Germans. So you can see her mother is still very much a not necessarily on the side of the US. However, she lives in the US. So you kind of see this whole dichotomy of struggle within her as far as like, who should I side for? Because she really doesn't want either one of them dead, but she definitely says, I don't want to hear about more dead Germans.
Yeah.
Pearl goes to get her father, which we find out is disabled. He has gotten the flu, I believe.
Yeah, I think they basically established that later that he had apparently gotten influenza and it really messed him up. He's basically helpless.
Yeah, he can't. I mean, he's just almost tongue out, drooling on himself, no function on his own whatsoever.
But still very clearly conscious.
He's in there.
Aware.
He's in there. Yeah. So she brings him to the table for supper, and she starts to eat, and her mother says, you must feed your father first, basically. Yeah. So she has to feed him.
Yeah.
The dad's played by Matthew Sunderland, who was in the film The Nightingale. He was also on the TV series Wanted, which I believe was after that James McAvoy, Angelina Jolie crap fest. And then another movie called Bloody Hell. He's done a bunch of other TV stuff and movies. He was kind of like smaller parts.
Yeah.
Next, we see that Pearl is reading a letter from her husband. We find out she's married. Her husband's off at war. She's sitting on the edge of her bathtub. And then she decides to bathe in front of her dad.
Yeah. Yeah, because she just bathed her dad, basically.
Yeah, she had bathed him, and now she's bathing herself. And she's like kicking her feet and blah, blah, blah.
And she's got her dad in his wheelchair, like turned to face the tub. So he's like watching her.
He's like watching this. And I'm like, okay. Different times, I guess.
Yeah.
And she tells,
Well, when her mother comes in, it's clear because her mother's like, "Pearl, what are you doing?"
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
And she's like, "I didn't want to waste the hot water,"
Yes, yeah.
But I mean, so it's to me, I think it's we had the thing with the goose, right, and now we have this where it's almost like she's not capable really of processing necessarily that it's
Right from wrong, almost.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, like, what are the things that are proper? What are the things that are
Yeah,
not? And she's just
yeah,
um, so while she's in the bathtub, she tells her dad that she's going to town, she's gonna get his meds, and then she's gonna go to the picture show while she's
yeah,
there. So yeah, her mother's like, Pearl, blah, 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 and wheels her dad out of there. And next scene, we see her riding into town on her bicycle. People are masked due to the influenza,
yeah,
which I thought was kind of it was like this weird. The time when they filmed this was during
yeah.
COVID.
You
Can we
have to
say that?
wonder
Can we say
if
that on
yeah, you have to
on
wonder
YouTube?
if this was like somewhat intentional.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like it had to be. I mean, yeah, obviously during the 1918 pandemic, people masked up,
Yeah.
but they had the people back then who whined and cried about it too,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I did think that was pretty interesting given everything we've just been through.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was definitely intentional. So she goes in, picks up the meds. She ends up taking the change that was from getting the meds and goes to the theater, to which there's some war propaganda playing up on the screen at first.
Yeah.
And then we see like dancing follies or something like that, or something follies, and dancing girls come out like a chorus line, they're kicking and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, man, movies sucked back then. So she watches the film, she leaves, she goes off into this alleyway. She has one of the pamphlets or the playbill things, the Playboy from the thing. And she's looking through it, and the projectionist comes out the back door, the guy who's been running the film. He comes out to have a smoke, and they start talking, and you could tell he kind of fancies her, or fancies Chris, anything.
Did we get this guy's name?
No, we did not. In fact, even through IMDb, he is known as the projectionist.
Okay, because that's all I had him listed as during my entire note-taking session.
However, there is one point where she says a name. Whether or not it is his name or not, we don't know. So it was kind of this.
Okay,
I don't know, but
yes, I thought so, and I was going to put that in, but I'm like, I don't know, so I just
yeah, he's known as the projectionist.
That's funny.
So he's played by David Cornsweet. He was on an episode of House of Cards, a show called We Own This City. He's done a lot of TV stuff, mostly.
Yeah.
He invites her in. He says, you can come in for the second watch and all that. And she says, no, I need to get back. And she tells him that she's married and about her husband being off at war and whatnot. And so when she declines, he runs back in, grabs a piece of the film.
Yeah.
Back then it was actual film. And he cuts off a clip or just one frame of it and gives it to her and asks, he's like, here, this is for you to have a memory of today, of what you watched. And so he says, you can come back at any point, just knock on the back door. So she rides home. She's daydreaming of being up on the screen and all that. And the little film piece goes flying out of her pocket and goes off into a cornfield. And she makes her way into the cornfield looking for it. And she, I think, gets lost, or at least it seems that way.
That's what I thought too. I'm like, she ran one direction. Did she get
turn around?
Yeah. I don't know.
Whatever. So anyway, she gets into the cornfield. I think it was more so she's frantic about the film piece, and it's not necessarily maybe that she got lost. She's just like she just is so frustrated, doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So she ends up in a clearing and she sees a scarecrow. Well, she gets scared at first by some crows.
Yeah.
Obviously, the scarecrow's not doing its job, but she gets scared by these crows and she sees this scarecrow. She climbs up to where the scarecrow is and is right up in its face.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Can I have this dance?"
Yeah.
And then she drops him off the cross.
The funny thing here is when she's standing up there and like she's real close to it, I'm like, is she gonna kiss this thing?
Yeah.
And then she just like, you just see it hit the floor, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, she's not gonna kiss it. Of course not. So she proceeds to dance with it very dramatically. Music's playing, big sweeping music once again.
Camera's like, doing that, circular thing around them and all that. It's a really cool scene.
Yeah. And then she proceeds to make out with the scarecrow.
Yeah, she does the dance dip thing, and then dip,
the kiss, and it's a very, very passionate kiss.
Yeah.
And when she pulls back, she sees the projectionist's face on the scarecrow, and she drops him and to the ground, and she screams at it, "I'm married!" Yeah. And then she thinks about the projectionist and gets on top of the scarecrow and proceeds to grind on it very sexually until the climax of the scene.
Yeah. And you hear some more crows call and fly away.
As she's very satisfied with her dancing.
Yeah.
She arrives back home. The
mother got the hat on.
She still got the hat. She had taken the hat off the scarecrow and put it on.
And it's like this big black top hat.
Yeah. And her mother says, "What took you so long?" And she's still wearing the hat. She's like, "Where did you find that?" And she's like, "Oh, I found it on the way home." And she's like, "Go wash your hair. You could have geez, there's a cat." Yeah. And she goes, "Go wash your hair. You could have the germ or lice, and all this. And clean your father. Don't let him sit in his own filth." So once again, we're having another bath in front of Daddy.
Yeah.
And while she's in there, she proceeds to get kind of up into his face, and
first she just pinches his finger.
Oh yeah, she pinches his hand, and his finger, and to see if he would move or give any sort of react at all.
Yeah.
Then she gets up in his face, and she's leaned up on the side of the tub, and she starts poking and prodding at him. And she's like, "Are you still in there?" And then she reaches up and starts to choke him.
Yeah. And you can see she's putting pressure on him. He's reacting.
Yeah. And he's like, he's having a hard time breathing. And then she finally lets him go.
Yeah.
So we're once again at supper time. Next scene. And they're sitting there, and it's very dimly lit. And her mother says, "Where's the change?" And she goes, she says, "I got some hard candy with it. I got some candy for the ride home."
Yeah, her mom noticed that 8 cents was missing.
Yeah, 8 cents.
I think it was 8 cents, something like that.
And then so she pulls the bowl of soup away from her, and she goes, "Well, then no supper for you then.
Yeah.
You already had, your candy was your supper. You can have the rest tomorrow," And she's like, "But Mama, I'm hungry." And she goes, "It's your foolishness. It's up to only you and me to survive. And foolishness is a sign of weakness. Yeah. Your father and I didn't raise you to be weak." Yeah.
And this is where her mom is like, it's basically, it's already hard enough for them because they're German farmers.
Yeah.
So in the middle of what is already obviously a very rough time for anybody.
Yeah.
They are German and maybe not, so well looked on, so they have to be careful.
Yeah.
So
And see, this is also too kind of what we were talking about earlier about the COVID thing and all that,
Mhm.
with the influenza. This is also around the same time too, where it was known as the Chinese virus,
Oh,
quote unquote.
yeah,
And there was a lot of, I mean, there was flat out hatred against Asians at that time too. So that same there was a lot of correlation between a lot of these different things that were going on at that same time and how
yeah,
people were being treated. And I saw a lot of that
oh yeah,
brought out in
yeah,
this. There was, without it being preachy, there was a lot of things of saying this is how classes are treated. This is how people were,
yeah,
and so it was, it was, without it being preachy, it was a good statement on that.
yeah,
Um, so she's finally excused to go to her room. And she's kneeling down by her bread.
butter bread.
She had stuffed some under her mattress, and she's like, "I got a loaf of bread." She's kneeling down by her bed, and she's praying. She's like, "Dear God, make me a star so I can move far away from here," and blah blah
Yeah,
blah. I hate it here, type thing.
this is
And
a great shot, dude.
then it goes and
Yeah,
out the window, and you see the stars, and then just one single shooting star and
yeah.
everything.
She
It's just,
wished upon a star.
yeah,
Yep.
and the thing about, again, the the cinematography in this was just so brilliant. How
Yeah,
period they kept this. I
yeah,
mean, it down to just the little details of very much these things that are, back then, these tropes of like, oh, if you wish upon a star,
yeah,
or oh, this, how much they're kept in there, whereas now you just be like, oh, come on, that's, nah, 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 it, but back then it was still thought of as these fantasy things,
yeah,
but anyway, so the next morning the dawn comes, she's milking the cows, um and we have some visitors that show up. It turns out to be Pearl's mother-in-law as well as her sister-in-law.
yeah.
Mitzi
Let's see. Yep.
is the sister-in-law's name. They apparently are very affluent, very
Clearly.
well-to-do,
Yeah.
very white. They've come to bring some food for Pearl's family because they know that they probably don't have much.
Yeah.
Um, and they
And
had all
this is something they're apparently doing for many people because at one
a
point
lot.
Mitzi I think says that they still have several to
Yeah,
deliver.
yeah,
So
pigs. They were
yeah,
bringing full roasted pigs to people, and
yeah,
whether or not, and see, this is what I was trying to figure out is if they were doing this for so many people. Was it a statement of we have money here, we're giving you, and really was charity,
yeah,
because Pearl's mother says we don't accept charity,
yeah,
from the mother-in-law and all that.
yeah,
And is it that point where it's really we're doing this to look good, or were they actually being charitable? I don't know.
yeah. I don't
And
know, and since we never actually get any screen time with the mother-in-law because she's just in the background,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You never really get a sense of, and not even from Mitzi, you don't really get a sense of whether they're doing it actually to be
yeah,
charitable or to be showy, you know?
yep.
So,
So it was very southern.
yeah.
There's a term here, oh bless your heart, down here in the South. We're like, oh bless his heart. Oh,
Yeah.
or oh bless your heart. That's just basically um oh yeah, you're a piece of crap. But I'm gonna say it in the nicest way possible. It's like, oh bless your heart. It's like, oh, you're an idiot, but I'm not gonna say that. So that's kind of how, yeah. So there, it's a way of looking down on somebody, but not looking down on somebody. So
yeah,
they're very much that type. I got from the rest of this, and we see this a little bit later from Mitzi. But Mitzi's
yeah.
played by Emma Jenkins Purrow. She was in The Brokenwood Mysteries, My Life is Murder, and One of Us is Lying. More than likely, none of you have heard of these because they're all TV shows, I believe, possibly from New Zealand, since she is an American-born New Zealand actress. So, but she did a really great Southern accent.
Oh, yeah.
So Pearl and Mitzi start talking about Howard, who's Pearl's husband / Mitzi's brother, about him going to war, how he just wanted to basically prove to their dad that, he could be something and do something with his life. You see the mom and the mother-in-law kind of arguing back and forth back on the porch, out of focus. And the mother-in-law just sets the pig, in a big tray down on the porch. And she's like, we're just leaving it. And she's like, come on, Mitzi. And Mitzi says that there is a touring dance group that is looking and holding auditions that Saturday. And that she was going to go try out, and Pearl says, "Oh, I need to do it too." And so they're like, "Let's meet up together. Sister-in-laws need to stick together." So they make plans, and Mitzi and the mother-in-law leave. Pearl then goes into the bunkhouse next, and she's looking at that playbill, the program from the movie that she had snuck into. And then she sneaks back up into her mother's room to steal a dress.
Yeah.
She also takes the top hat with her as well, out from the bunkhouse, and she sees her mother and her father out in the garden. And after Pearl grabs the dress, she looks back out, and they're gone.
Yeah.
They're not there. So she knows that they're coming back into the house. So Pearl has to go in and hide the dress and the hat off in her room. I didn't know if you were going to say something to that. Maybe it was just the cat.
Yeah. Just the cat.
Just the cat. Later that night, we see Pearl. She's wearing the dress, wearing the top hat. She's sneaking out of her window onto a tin roof with like these big heels, chunky, and very, very loud. Don't know how anybody missed it. So she climbs down from the roof and rides back into town on her bike.
Another amazing shot, dude.
Yes.
Because she's riding her bike and you see the clouds, right? Yeah. And like the whole sky, just like roiling with clouds. And again, I felt like that was a very intentional scene.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like showing what's inside of her also, like building up, you know? Yeah. So it was such a good shot.
She's riding along. She's kind of in the third of the screen, which, if you know good filmmaking and cinematography, you always work with thirds. And it's just, she's in the right spot for that shot with these clouds. It's a very, very wide panoramic shot of her riding by the cornfields. And it's hard to describe. It's not a calm. It's not a calm scene in the sky. Those clouds are they are moving, and it's like they're churning. Yeah, it's like a storm building.
Yeah,
which it does. It very much is a callback to what she's starting to go through.
Yeah, and again, it has nothing to do with like what's happening or it has nothing to do with like there's not a storm coming. I really just think it's symbolic of what's going on with her. Yep. But it's very, very good shot.
Yep. She rides back into the town, knocks on the back door of the theater, and the projectionist come out, and he's like, "Hey, I didn't expect you to be back this soon." And she tells him about the audition. He welcomes her in. We get a really cool shot of the back of the theater as they're walking to the projection room.
Yeah.
And he's basically telling her that, he's a traveler. He's a what did he call? He called himself a bohemian.
Bohemian, yeah.
He travels around.
He can pack up and leave whenever he wants to, is what he tells her.
Yeah, he's got the life of a gypsy almost. And they talk about what she wants for her future and how she wants to be in films and how she wants to be up on the stage. And he's like, well, what do you want to watch? I'll put on whatever you want to watch. She's like, I want to watch the movie, that Follies movie again. And he's like, you've already seen that. Let me show you something that nobody's seen.
Yeah.
So he proceeds.
I knew what this was the moment he said that.
Yeah. He proceeds to pull out a film that he said he got while he was over in France, stationed in France. And it's a stag film.
Yeah.
And she's like, what is this? And he basically almost says that these are the type of films that he wants to make. He wants to get into doing it. This is the future. This is where the money's going to be.
He says that pictures like this are going to revolutionize the industry.
Which
it did. Yeah, it did. And I also see that, first of all, it's a reality, but it's also sort of a call forward to the previous film.
Yeah, X. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's like, well, are these type of films legal? And he's like, well, doing it's legal.
Yeah.
Filming it's not. And he's like, it's reality. And she's like, I don't like reality. And he's like, well, living ain't that easy. And so she says that she wants to leave. She wants to get out of the house where she's at.
Yeah.
And, she goes, if he says, what if someday them being gone's too late, for you to live out your dreams? And she goes, I just wish that they would die.
Yeah. If only they would just die.
Yeah.
And he's like, pardon?
Yeah. And then he says, well, why don't you come overseas with me after the pandemic's over? And he's like, they're really artsy over in Europe. He goes, maybe you could even be in some of these types of films. He goes, I'd love to see you in those. He's like, I'd love for you to be in them. I'd love to be in you. So next we see her. She's like, I gotta go, and she then goes back home. She's sneaking back in.
Yeah.
Still wearing the dress, she's not wearing the hat at this point, but she hears her mother crying. She sneaks down to her mother's room, and we see the mother laying on the bed. Like, it's just, life is just too much for her.
Yeah.
Pearl gets back into...
Honestly, at this point, I'm like, oh, the dad died while she was gone. But no.
Yeah. So Pearl crawls into bed. She sees a picture of her husband that she's kept, him in his war regalia. Not regalia, in his war uniform. And she's like, what are you staring at? Like, she's mad at him. She's like, what are you staring at?
Oh, is this where she says that? I remember that. But
yeah. And we get the first sense of, she knows now that she's starting to do something wrong. But she's wondering why people are looking at her. Like, what are you looking at type thing.
Yeah.
The next morning, Pearl wheels her father. She wheels past her mother, takes the dad outside. Or no, she just wheels him outside the door.
Yeah.
Of the
but
house.
Not gently.
No.
She's like cruising through, and it's just like
down the steps, all this sort of stuff. And she's going across the lawn, and the mother's looking out the window from upstairs.
Yeah.
And Pearl's hightailing it down to the dock.
Yeah.
She's had it. She's done at this point. And she starts calling for the gator. And I don't remember the gator's name. She's like, whatever. Man, it's cold in this room. I keep wiping my nose. I'm just like, she tells her daddy, she's like, I'm leaving, daddy. Yeah. I'm gonna go off to be a big star and blah blah.
She's like, it would be easier if I didn't feel like I was abandoning you.
Yeah. So she's like, I gotta do what I gotta do, basically. And the gator's getting closer and closer, and the dad's face.
Oh yeah.
You finally start to see him actually make some sort of
I feel like this is the first time you really see that. Yeah, he's definitely still in there.
Yeah,
yeah, because he's freaking out as much as someone who can't move at all can freak out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and the gator's getting closer and closer. The dad's kind of I don't remember, but it's almost like you kind of see his toes trying to move.
Oh yeah,
and all of a sudden you hear her mother go, "Pearl, what are you doing?"
Yeah,
and she says something to Pearl, and then she goes, "Why do you hate me, Mama?" Back to her, and she's like, "I just want you to, know that basically life's not about what you want; it's about making the best of what you have, type thing." Like you don't get all the things that you want in life. It's not that simple. It's not that easy, and all that. You just got to deal with what you're given and just make the best of it.
Yeah.
So the mother grabs the wheelchair, wheels the father back up to the house. Pearl can't find the alligator. She doesn't know where she's at. So she gets into the swamp pond thingy off to the side, and finds out the gator's laid eggs. She finds a nest of eggs, and she steals one of them and takes it up to the barn. And she puts it up into the loft and just kind of sets it up there in the hay. And she gets down and the cow, I forgot what the cow's name was. She named it after some movie star. And
all her animals are named after stars from the pictures.
Yep. And she goes, "Stop staring at me."
Yeah.
So now we get the second time that someone's staring at her, judging her almost. And then she goes back up. She climbs back up to the loft, and she's picturing her husband, Howard, walking back up the drive, back to the house, and then
coming back from the war.
Yep. Yeah. And then a flash to her holding the egg, and then a flashback to the husband, flashback to her, and then we see him explode.
Yeah.
Like he stepped on an IUD, and she squeezes the egg at the same time and just crushes it.
Yeah.
So now she's taken a second life, Yeah,
and so to speak.
It's just dripping down. So, then we go straight from there to them at supper again. And the mother then pulls out the movie program, the playbill, slams it down, puts it down on the table, and she reveals that she knows what was going on.
Yeah.
That Pearl's been to the movies. That's really what she did. And she goes, "You put us all at risk, by going out there. You could have brought the germ home to us."
And she could have. Well, while she's in the theater earlier, she's got a mask on, but she hears someone coughing, and she kind of like turns around and looks, and like tightens the mask a little bit. But
after she takes a swig of her daddy's medicine.
Oh yeah. She takes a swig of dad's medicine, and then
which was some strong stuff too.
Yeah.
So she says, "Well, Mama, I'm going to a dance audition tomorrow."
Yeah.
And for all this, and the mother says, "No, you're not." And she goes, "Yes, I am." And then the mother basically goes into this whole rant about how she's ungrateful for everything that she has, the roof over her head, the food, and all that.
Yeah.
And she just says, "I just want to know if I'm good enough. If I don't make it, then I'll come back home and I'll never speak of it again,
Yeah.
And the mother says, "Well, I know," she says, "No one knows what I'm capable of." So then the mother says, "I've seen what you're capable of. The darkness that's within you when you're alone.
I've seen the things you do in private." It's like, whoa. Yeah. Whoa. I mean, because at this time, we've only seen a couple things.
Yeah.
So it's like, what has Mom seen? She doesn't elaborate.
No. So, and she says that there's a malevolence festering within you.
Yeah.
And then the mother's getting irate. She pulls out a knife, a big chef's or big cutting knife, chef's knife.
Yeah.
And she holds it to the dad's throat and says, "Why don't you just, or she hands it to Pearl first and is like, why don't you just kill him already? Kill him. That's what you wanted to do. And she goes, why don't I do it for you and make it easy on you? And puts the knife to the dad's throat. And the dad's like, his eyes are just like, oh man, don't bring me into this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And she says to Pearl, she goes, when you fail, and you will
fail.
Yeah. You will know what it's like every day of my life looking at you and knowing how I've failed raising, like how I've failed with you. And so then there's a slap to the face, another slap to the face.
Yeah, because her mom says like something like what do you even want or something like that, and Pearl says, I just don't want to end up like you.
Yeah.
And that sets mom off. So
yeah. So they start fighting, slapping, pulling, wrestling around, and the Pearl pushes the mother up against the fireplace to where Mama's dress catches on fire from the back.
And it lights up quick.
Her. Yeah, she was wearing rayon back in like the 1918s. She's just polyester gone. So she's in flames and all this. Pearl runs over, grabs the pot of soup off the or all the corn or whatever. She grabs a big pot off the and douses the mother in it. And there's vegetables, mainly corn, all over the floor. It's corn. And
man, that makes it even worse because I didn't even put that together until you just said something. Because I'm just like, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, I don't. She grabs like a bucket of water and chucks it on her. But no, it would have been the stew,
the boiling
stew.
Yeah.
Okay, I totally didn't miss that. But she chucks it on her.
Just douses it on her. And you see the mother roll over, and she is charred, face severely burned,
but still alive.
She's still alive, but like, type, barely able to do anything. So Pearl grabs her mom, I believe by the feet?
I think so.
Grabs her by the feet, and drags her to the cellar and down the stairs with her head
bouncing all the way,
all the way down the stairs. And then finally hits the ground, and she just leaves her down there. She runs out the door, leaving her dad sitting at the table. And goes directly to town to see the projectionist. Next thing we see is it goes to like black and white film, and we see Pearl standing there being cheered by a silent crowd on stage, and she's just reveling in the applause, being cheered. And then she looks out and she sees her husband out in the crowd, just sitting there staring, and her dad just sitting there staring, and her mother, which is scarred all over, just sitting there staring. And she pulls off the mask.
Her mom has a mask on. From the pandemic. She pulls it off, and like it's charred and like
it was very Dark Knight, or the one with not Christian. It had Christian Bale, but Heath Ledger, and they had Two-Face in it. And his face had gotten all burnt. So you could see like his teeth through the side of his face. That's kind of how it was. You could see into her mouth. And she wakes up in a frantic. This has all been a dream. She's in the arms of the projectionist. She's been there all night with him. And she's like, I got to get ready. I got to get ready for my audition. I got to practice. And she's putting on her clothes quickly. And he's like, well, why don't I drive you home? So he drives her home. And on the way back down the road, she sees a soldier coming home, and she thinks it could be her husband, but she's not for sure. They pull up to the house. She goes, "Wait here just a minute." She runs inside. She wheels Daddy out to the living room area. She's like, "I'll be back to clean you up in a little bit." And all this, and we see a shot again of the projectionist. He's outside and he's looking, and there's the pig still sitting there on the porch.
Yeah, the pig that the mother-in-law brought earlier. Yeah,
it's got maggots all over it, crawling around. She says, "You can come on in," and so he comes in, and Daddy's out in the living area, and she's like, "Daddy, this is," and she just kind of introduces him and said, "This is Daddy," and I don't think she actually says anything. She doesn't introduce the guy necessarily, but then she just puts her hand and her head on him like, "Oh, we're in love," type thing. She goes, "Let's go off to my bedroom," and the dad's kind of like, and all that. So they go off to the bedroom. They're making out on the bed, and she's like, "I've always wanted to do this," and then he starts hearing noises and like banging.
Yeah.
Like
he's hearing some sort of banging sound coming from somewhere in the house or something. Yeah.
And Pearl's like, "Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing." And he's like, "No, I hear something." She's like, "Oh, it's and she starts kind of acting weird at this point. Like she's acting kind of crazy. Like,
yeah.
He's like, "I'm going to go find out what it is." So he goes to investigate. He gets down to the kitchen and he sees the mess all over the floor.
Well, now, wait a minute. He says something right before he leaves the bedroom because she's like begging him not to go. And he looks at her. He's like, "What's the matter with you?"
Oh, yeah.
Well, I feel like that plays into kind of what you were saying earlier, where like people were looking at her weird and like judging her, So I was like, oh, that was the wrong thing to say, dude.
Yeah. So he gets down to the kitchen. He sees the corn on the floor and all that sort of stuff. He turns back to the hallway and she's standing right there. Yeah. So freaks him out. And she says, "Oh, I found out what the noise was. It was the dog. He was the one who made the mess. I put it down in the cellar, in the root cellar. So he's making all that noise." She goes, "Let's go out to the barn. I'm going to show you the animals." So she takes him out there and she's like, "Blah, blah, blah. Here's this one and this one." She's telling him the names and all the animals that are her friends and all that. And he goes, "Well, what's your dog's name?" She goes, "We don't have a dog."
Oops.
And he goes, "You said that you put the dog down in the cellar." And she goes, "Well, I mean," and so he's putting things together like something's really messed up.
Yeah.
And she's acting more and more frantic. And he says, "Well, I better be going."
He's like, "Oh, look at the time.
Look at the time."
He literally looks at his watch.
Yeah. He's like, "You better be going. And you've got to practice." And she's like, "Did I do something wrong?" And he goes, No, nothing wrong, nothing. And she's like, "What did you see?" And he was like, "Oh man." And she's like, "You're lying. You're lying." Then she's like, "Why are you leaving me? Why does everybody leave me?" Type thing, and talking about Howard and all that. And he's like, "You're scaring me, Pearl." And he takes off. He heads back to the car. And Pearl grabs the pitchfork. And he gets into his car and he looks back over towards the barn. He doesn't see her. Not coming up the hill or anything.
Yeah.
And he turns back to look forward and she goes, "You're not leaving me, or you're not going to leave me here." And she's standing on the other side of the car and she stabs him in the chest with the pitchfork. And he starts taking off. He pushes her away. He starts taking off in the car, and he ends up kind of slumping over as he gets partway down the drive. And she's coming back down with the pitchfork. She drags him out of the car, opens up the door, drags him out of the car, flops him on the ground. And she's like, "You're not going to leave me here," and stabs him in the head. Right through the mouth, through the head.
Yep.
So she's all bloody at this point. She's washing up Daddy at this point.
Well, before she bathes Dad, something happens here. Because she goes to her mother, right? And I think like I don't know if she opened the cellar door and saw her mom, but I couldn't tell if her mom was still all the way down in the cellar or if maybe she was like had been climbing up the stairs and that's what all that banging was, because she basically chucks her mom back down the stairs. Her mom
That's
goes
right.
rolling down the stairs.
Yeah, she like kicks her or pushes her down the stairs.
Something,
again.
yeah.
That's right.
Because I was like, wait, did she go down and get her and knock her back down, or was her mom had been climbing up the stairs?
I think her mom had climbed up the stairs and was like banging on the door or something.
Yeah,
I think that's what they were hearing.
Yeah, because as soon as she goes back in, you see her mom rolling down the stairs again.
Yeah,
and then she goes back to Dad.
She goes back to Daddy. She's getting him cleaned up, and he looks freaked out. Like he's
terrified.
And she's cleaning him off, and then she's like, "I wish you wouldn't look at me like that." Well, we get another "stop looking at me," or type moment. She gets dressed for her to audition. This bright red dress. Got makeup and all that. Hair's done up.
It's a beautiful dress too.
Oh yeah,
by the way. Just really a very very like period piece.
Oh yeah,
dress, but it's
beautiful look. This is the dress from all the posters and all that sort of stuff. The bright red. And, she gives Daddy, she gives a little twirl for Daddy. He's in a suit back down in the living room, in his wheelchair still. She comes up, she says, "Thank you for everything, Daddy," and gives him a kiss, and then takes a pillow.
You see a tear. You see a tear roll down his eye
because he knows he's done with. And she smothers him with the pillow. So anyway, we know Dad's dead at this point. She then pushes the projectionist while he's in his car into the pond. You see the gator swimming up. And this is the point where I don't know if it's actually his name or whatever, but she says, "Au revoir, Johnny."
Oh, okay.
So at that point, I'm like, is his name Johnny? But he's never credited as Johnny.
Okay.
And I believe. Now, it might be in the credits. I don't remember.
Yeah,
but
I don't remember. Huh.
So anyway, we see her meet up with Mitzi at the audition at a church. And
she is stone-faced, too.
Oh, yeah.
She's just like completely checked out of reality now.
Just determined, like, this is the only thing that matters now. She's focused and all that. Mitzi tells her that she's heard that they're only taking one person from each town. And then Pearl says, "Well, it has to be me." Mitzi's like, "Well, that's not very nice of you to say," and blah, blah, blah. So Mitzi's getting nervous. It's coming down. Mitzi's the next one up. She's like, "Switch places with me. Switch places with me. I'm so nervous. I don't think I could do this." And Pearl's like, "Okay." And so they switch places. And Mitzi says, "You're a good friend." And Pearl says, "Am I?
Yeah.
Am I?" And she's like, "Oh, sisters-in-laws got to stick together."
Yeah.
And so Pearl's like, maybe I do have one friend in life type thing.
Someone who doesn't, look at me, that way.
Lie to me, look at me, judge me in a certain way. They call for Pearl. Well, they don't call her specifically, but they call for the next person. So she goes in. The sound is all muffled.
Yeah.
Everything's moving in slow motion. You see there's 4 judges at the table. 3 older women in hats. I think I'm going to sneeze. 1 bald dude. I don't know. Anyway, she goes up onto the stage. She's very stoic, very somber.
Yeah.
No smile whatsoever. Just like very, I don't even know the face. It's very like focused, very determined. She has like resting bitch face going on. It's just like almost a scowl.
Yeah.
It's like this, almost that look like football players get before they're about ready to go out, like, let's do this, type thing.
Yeah.
She gets up on the stage. She walks up to a big X on the floor, which I was like, that was nice.
Yep.
Nice touch. And then the music starts. It's like, ding, ding, ding. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, big smile.
Yeah.
Like, pops onto her face. It was like very showy. I am going to sneeze. This is horrible. Yeah. This makes for great TV. Anyway, so she's dancing. There's lots of expression. It's not the greatest dancing in the world. It's very, but
it is of the era. It is of the era, though. So
yeah, very like clockwork.
Yeah, it's very mechanical.
Type thing. And then the curtains open up, and there's this big, like, production painted war scene behind her, and you hear airplanes flying, and there's a chorus of women, girls dancing in like military uniforms,
fireworks in back. Honestly, it looks like a straight up something you would have seen like on a USO tour. That's exactly what she's imagining.
Yeah. And she goes to the end. She gets this big ta-da type moment at the end, and then the lights go out and it's just her on the stage, and she's like, type breathing type thing, and they're like, thank you, but it's gonna be a no. And she slowly brings her head back forward because her head was thrown way back. And she's like, pardon? And he says, we're looking for something different. Maybe, more all-American, younger, blonde.
Yeah. And I'm like, I was like, oh no, sister-in-law fits the bill perfectly. So
someone with X factor.
Yeah.
Which we heard a lot of in the film X, where they're talking about how Maxine had the X factor and, the X factor and all this. And she starts going through this weird paranoia thing. She's like, no, I can't. And she sees her mother as one of the judges, and then her husband sitting there, and her daddy as the judges.
Projectionist.
She starts she's having this breakdown. And she's like, please, I'm a star. And they're dragging her out of the building and all that. And next we see her sobbing behind the building. We get this pan around the back of the building, and then there's her sitting on the steps just sobbing. And we see Mitzi walking up to her, and she's consoling her, and she's like, how about I take you home? And Pearl's like looking up, and she's got like snot coming down her face and all this. It's just, I was like, that's gross. They get back to the house. And the Maggoty Pig is still on the porch.
It's even worse.
Tasty.
Yeah, and it's like decaying and all this. And Mitzi's like, is that our pig? And Pearl's sitting at the kitchen table, and she's like, Mama was right. I'm never getting off this farm. And Mitzi's downplaying it. Oh, those people don't know what they're talking about. And blah, blah, blah. It's no big deal. There'll be other chances and all this, and how they're stupid and they don't understand. And Pearl says, she goes, she goes, you don't understand. She goes, I don't feel well.
Yeah.
And Mitzi's like, oh no. Yeah. Do you have Mama would be upset.
Yeah.
If I brought home the germ, and she goes, I think there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And
Mitzi, she says that it's like there's something missing in me that the rest of the world has, which goes back to something her mom had said too, that she's missing part of her or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, it's called empathy.
Yeah, empathy, a conscience. Yeah. So Mitzi or Pearl says that I've done all these things and all this and blah blah blah. She goes, I've just never told anybody. And she goes, well, you've have you told Howard? And she goes, I haven't even told him. I don't know where I'd start. And she goes, well, practice with me. Pretend I'm Howard.
Yeah.
Tell me. So Pearl goes into it.
This is, and I didn't realize it until it was going on. I heard about this monologue. It's like 9 minutes long or something like that.
It is long.
Yeah. But I had read, I think this was all one take.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
It was so brilliantly acted.
It was very, very well done.
Remembered everything, and it was just the emotions that she goes throughout the whole thing. It's just this, you have these weird little ups and then really dark lows and then these points of sadness and then somewhat happiness and then back down. It was just, it's this weird journey, but it goes on forever. But it was so well done.
And so the first thing she says, because she's talking to Howard and she says, I hate you so much for leaving me here. I sometimes hope you die. And we do get a cut back to Mitzi who reacts to that. But I think we only get maybe one or two more cuts back to Mitzi. Other than that, this entire monologue is delivered with the camera right on.
Right in her face.
And it's just, it seems like the sort of thing that you would think has dragged on too long, but it's just so well executed that, she's...
And for this scene alone, a lot of people are saying that she should be up for an Oscar for this.
Oh, yeah. I could see,
And it's just so well delivered. Yeah. I mean, her whole performance throughout this movie is what really carries this film.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Not to say that the film was bad. I'm saying she made this movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it was brilliant. But then she starts talking about how she had a baby that was in her.
Yeah.
She ended up getting pregnant, but she didn't know how she could ever love anything else or, and how this thing was just feeding off of her and she just didn't want it and all that and how happy she was when it died and all this. And you're just
she basically, I mean, she admits to the affair here, but she also essentially admits that she only hooked up with Howard because she saw that he came from, that opulent life and she considered that her ticket off the farm. And so she played him basically.
Yeah. She used him. Yeah. Yeah. So when it's all over, she's teary-eyed, she's blah, blah, blah. She's just kind of in shock, and she looks up at Mitzi, and Mitzi's just kind of...
Yeah, she's wide-eyed.
Yeah. And she just kind of puts her hands on the table, and she's like, okay, well, I should go.
Yeah.
And Pearl says, are you frightened of me? Do you think I'm sick?
No.
She's like, no. She starts heading for the door, and then Pearl says, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
She's like, for what? And she goes, for getting the part.
Yeah.
And she goes, what do you mean? I didn't get the part. And she's like, you did. You can stop lying now, And she's like, but I didn't. She goes, you can stop lying now, type thing. She's like, I know that you got it. And then she's like, well, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Now, what's your takeaway from this? Because my feeling is that Mitzi didn't get the part, and that she's just saying this to basically try to diffuse the situation.
My thinking goes back to the, oh, bless your heart. The thing that I brought up earlier, it was I don't want to make you feel worse for how your situation is.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell you first off. I know Southern people. Southern people, they have that Southern hospitality, quote unquote. Yeah. They're all dicks. Okay. It's like, they'll stab you in the back first opportunity that they get, Now, I think she got the
Oh,
part.
okay.
I think she didn't want to make Pearl feel worse.
Yeah.
She was going to take off and wasn't even going to tell Pearl that she ever got the part.
Yeah.
Until she was already gone, and then she'd find out from her mother or something like that. And she'd already be far off and wouldn't have to deal with it herself.
Yeah.
That was my thoughts on
it.
So as Pearl is congratulating her and she's realized that Mitzi really has gotten the part and Mitzi's starting to admit it, Pearl starts to get this. She's gone from this really sad look to almost this, I'm not really sad, I'm more upset with you. Mm-hmm. Then it starts getting more of this kind of dead-eyed, almost maniacal look. And then she's like, you always get what you want. She's like, what do you mean? She's like, you're blonde and blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. You always get. And she's like, I really need to go. And she's like, you're not going to say anything, are you, about what she was saying? She goes, nobody has to know. It can be our secret. And Mitzi's like, okay, I won't tell anybody.
Well, she just turns around and leaves, actually. She just kind of like smiles and then leaves.
She leaves, walks out the door.
Yeah. Calmly.
Pearl comes out.
Very, very calmly. For someone who clearly knows that the person she's dealing with, well, for one, she just had admitted to her that she did all these horrific things, including down to murder, because Pearl admits to the killings. So Mitzi stays pretty calm for someone who is clearly knows she's in danger. So
walks out the door, goes down the porch. Pearl proceeds to then kind of follow her out the door slowly. Yeah. The door opens. Mitzi looks back, and Pearl's walking out down the porch, grabs an axe, and Mitzi turns around and starts to run.
And then she trips over a horror movie.
Yeah, trips completely over a horror movie, which I do like the fact, and I do have to say this, if you were to now go back and watch X, okay, remember all of there were spirits, like ghost type spirits throughout the movie in different places where they were killed on the property?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? Am I mixing this up? I mixed that up with the Devil's Candy.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm like, really?
Because I was like, oh, that's where this. No, I'm pretty sure it was X.
I do not remember seeing what you're talking about. I'm not saying it's not there.
I'm pretty sure that it was X. I remember it being in Devil's Candy is another great. We have to do Devil's Candy. That was a good one here too. But no, I'm pretty sure it was on X. There was different points on the property where people had died. And you see these different points of like spirits or ghosts at different random points. Okay. And I'll have to go back and watch. Yeah. It's been a while since I watched X. It was like right when it first came out is when I saw X. But I remember there being ghosts in the different places where they were killed on the property. And now seeing these deaths of where they happened, this is where those different spirits ended up coming up I'm pretty sure it was this movie.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I got to go back and watch it again. You've watched X more recently than me, so
yeah, but I just don't remember what you're talking about. Again, that doesn't mean anything. I don't remember what I had to eat yesterday, so
yeah, I may be mixing it up with Devil's Candy. I don't remember. Anyway, has nothing to do with the story. Anyway, Mitzi trips over a horror movie, like you said. Pearl catches up, hits her in the back with the axe. Yeah. And Mitzi's like, I'll do whatever you want. I'll do whatever you want. And Pearl just ends her with the axe right there in the driveway. And Pearl says, yeah, following up with this, I'll do whatever you want. She said, it's not about what I want anymore. It's about making the best of what I have. And which goes back to what her mother was saying on the dock earlier. Pearl then goes down into the cellar, and kind of lays down with her mom on the stairs, kind of like nuzzling up, cuddling up with her.
Oh, yeah.
And we start hearing her mother's voice singing Pearl a lullaby in German. You can tell the mom's dead.
Oh, yeah.
But Pearl's remembering all this, and it's just a montage of Pearl chopping up Mitzi and her body parts and throwing them to the gator. And then doing the chores, feeding the animals, not Mitzi, but feeding the animals, doing chores around the house, and then proceeding to brush the mother's hair to where it's falling out, and getting the dad wheeled in to the dinner table, even though he's dead, propping mother up at the chair at the dinner table, and bringing in the nasty pig from the porch and setting it onto the table.
Which is even more decayed and infested.
Yes.
Good old family dinner. Good old Southern family dinner.
Roadkill. Any other food that was there at the house, she's got it there on the table. And she starts praying for supper with her whole dead family there. It just kind of fades out to black at that point. So you're like, the end? It's not. We see a military truck coming down the road, pulling up to the farm. And you hear Howard say, "Home sweet home," type thing. He's like, "All right, we'll see you boys." And he jumps out of the truck and he goes up the lane to the house and comes in. He's like, Pearl, where are you at? I'm home. And he sees everybody at the dinner table except for Pearl.
Yeah.
We see mom and dad there. And it appears to be much later at this point.
Yeah.
This does not appear to be the same day.
No, because the food, the other food around the table is now much more like rotten and molded over.
And all that. Yeah. You see Pearl is in the pantry area and she's like, "Howard, I'm so happy you're home." And she's holding like a pitcher of lemonade.
Yeah.
And she gets this big smile on her face, like, this big psychotic, trying to put on a happy face, but
that's very clearly what it is. She's putting on her brain face.
She's so damaged at this point. And then the music sweeps in and it's like
credits now.
And it says the end in big sprawling letters, like they would on those old timey films. And then and it's just like this sound just for the longest time. It's this creepy sound. And Pearl is just standing there smiling and like tears coming down her face. And she's starting to lose it. Yeah. And she's like going kind of psycho looking. Yeah. And then she comes back to the smile. And then she kind of fades out. And then she's trying to put the smile back on. And this goes on for what?
It's like 2 minutes. It's because all the credits are coming up on screen right now. And it's this whole thing. You can see, I honestly feel like part of this might not have even been acting because she's keeping her eyes open almost this whole time. I think she maybe blinks like once. And so a lot of this could have just been the body's natural reaction to maintaining that pose and keeping your eyes open.
Possibly. But it's so unnerving.
Man. It's good.
And then eventually the screen just kind of circles black down into her face. and then we go to complete black with the credits still rolling. And it's like, do I get up now?
I know. Is it over now?
It's like, but it was still, I mean, it had that same old-timey movie feel to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is the end of the film.
That's it.
That was the end of Pearl. Drum roll, sir. As we do every week.
Yes.
What did you think? What did you think of this film?
So much.
Well, I get a drink.
Much like X, I would say this is very tangentially a horror film.
Okay.
I do think, for one, I did like it. I think it was better than X, personally.
Oh, yeah.
I liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it. It's not one of those things that like I would feel super compelled to sit down and watch again. But I really liked it. And I think I didn't know who Mia Goth was before watching X. If people don't start to know who she is now, that's criminal. Because you said earlier that she carried this film. That's true. For sure. But it's more just that, like, the scenes she's in, you can see as, like, I had noted earlier that this is, like, a really great look at, like, a psychopath descending into madness. Right?
Yes.
And like, that scene with the monologue is so well done. That ending scene, where it could have been a freeze frame, but no, she's just standing there holding a smile for, like, 2 minutes. It's like...
Yeah.
No, I think... Yeah, the performances in this film were fantastic. I really liked some of the shots. Is it horror? It's horror adjacent, maybe. You know, I was surprised because, and I guess I just misinterpreted this. In X, I got the impression that Pearl was a big star, and that as she aged, and she lost that. She lost all the things that made her, you know, able to be a star, you know, the youth and the beauty and all that. But in this, so that's why, like, when she didn't win the competition, I was shocked. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
But, and so basically then she builds a life with Howard after all, it seems like. And I guess he just keeps her from going off the deep end too often, maybe. I don't know. But no, I really like the movie. I definitely think it was better than X, which I still liked. I just think, I don't know. I liked the tone of this one better, you know. But I don't know.
Like I told you when I first saw this movie, cinematically, it was such a beautiful film. I had not seen anything like this ever. You know, it was, and I've told you this before. To me, it reminded me of a new form of Hitchcock cinema.
Oh yeah.
Where Hitchcock, known as the Godfather of, you know, the Godfather of horror, his stuff wasn't what we necessarily consider horror today. His stuff was more a descent into madness, or is really what I'm seeing really happening, or is this just in my mind? Or, you know, it was like a play on mental. A lot of times it was a play on a person's mental, cognitive, or their mental senses on what was going on. And so I liked the fact that, to me, it was like a modern day Hitchcock. If Ty West can continue this trend of playing to that and writing movies really, really well, and I really don't think it was just him either. I think, you know, Mia Goth played a big part in the writing of this as well. Those two together, if they can continue to, I wouldn't say build on this same character necessarily, or build in this same world necessarily, but still keep the same style of filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go on to do incredible things together. Again, that's why a lot of people are saying this is an Oscar-worthy performance for Mia Goth.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether or not she gets the recognition for it would be a complete crime if she didn't.
Yeah.
But like they're saying, it could be the first year that we could possibly see 2 horror films even in contention for an Oscar. I loved it. I loved this movie. And like I said last week, this was the movie where I was sitting in the theater and really went, we need to do something more with this horror stuff. Because I called you the next day because we were still doing the other podcast.
Yeah.
We'd taken a small hiatus, and I said, all right, so here's how we come back. We don't. Let's go this route, and because it got you to this point. Are you taking a piss in a bottle?
No,
what happened?
No, I was adjusting the lid on my.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember because we've been talking about doing this podcast for years, and I had briefly brought it up again, and because I was kind of wanting to test the waters. I'm like, this is something we've talked about in the past, and I really didn't think you were going to want to do it, but then you went and saw Pearl, and the next day, here we are, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that inspires you to do something different. To step outside of the box of your normal whatever that you're used to doing, and going and doing the type of cinematography that they did, the look that they went for. It really challenges the stereotypical norms of horror.
Totally agree. And it's one of those where I would love to see more people approach the genre in this way, even if it is not necessarily my my favored subgenre. It's just we don't get enough of it, and I feel like this has happened with us several times now, and I know we never covered like Ari Aster stuff on here, but I always felt the same way about him. Is that we have these people in Hollywood who are putting out these movies that maybe break a convention a bit, and I tend to enjoy those quite a bit, and they're not for everyone. This movie isn't for everyone,
absolutely.
But I would like to see more of stuff like this, if only because it's not as much as I love stuff like, The Conjuring, and I love James Wan, stuff like that. It's pretty typical horror, whereas this, I feel like is something that we don't see a lot of. And I love it. You had mentioned how it's like Oklahoma, except with blood,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I felt like even with X, I mean, that was basically a softcore porn with
it was
blood.
It was like almost like a 70s grindhouse movie.
Yeah, more something like that, I guess.
Yeah. Exploitation type movie.
Yeah, and this was more of like, what if, these types of movies had old. It was like some of the thing you'd go to see the theaters in the 60s, but except it's actually, a look into someone's descent into, psychopathy or whatever.
Yeah. It had Gone with the Wind type moments.
Yeah.
It just, but anyway, I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. Like you said, it's very niche. It's very, some people love it. Some people hate it. The acting alone carried it for me. I felt like it was almost like a single person movie.
Yeah.
With some extras. You know, it was very much her.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole movie.
And honestly, if it hadn't been for Mia Goth's performance in this, I don't know that it could have risen.
It wouldn't have carried.
No, I don't. Wouldn't have for me, it wouldn't have risen to the level of something that I enjoyed. And this, I definitely enjoyed, even if maybe not as much as you. I still really enjoyed it, and she needs to be up for some awards for this, if only for that monologue scene alone. It was so good, so good.
Yeah. Question for the audience in this one, not for you.
Okay, sir. Fine.
Question for the audience. We've talked about this horror adjacent film. Almost, it's horror, borderline. I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this. We've talked, both Shane and I, a few times about whether or not we should review the film "Don't Worry, Darling." Some people say it's a thriller. Some people have thought of it as horror, slightly. It's not necessarily categorized. But I'd like to see what you guys think. Should we review this film? To me, it's slightly horror adjacent. But anyway, leave a comment down below. And while you guys are down there, make sure you guys hit like and subscribe. While you're there, let us know. Don't worry, darling. Because I started thinking about when you said Ari Aster, immediately my mind goes to Florence Pugh and Midsummer, and I like her.
Tasty.
I like her a lot. Anyway, well, Pearl definitely gets a big thumbs up from me.
Same.
Sounds like it got a big thumbs up from you.
Yep.
Is it one that I'll go back and watch over and over and over? Probably not. But I still dug it.
Yeah.
It's still one of my favorite films that came out this year. Just for the sheer creativity of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you guys want to check it out, you can pick up physical copies of it. You guys can also, I believe Amazon has it and some other places wherever you guys get your on demand.
At some point, like when we get further and further into this podcast, I think we'll have to do our rankings of the movies we watched for the year. I know we're only on episode 7, so I don't know how much that makes sense this year, but I would say that Pearl would at least be in the upper half of what we've watched so far for the podcast.
Yeah. I thought it was good. Yeah, we'll take the top 7 films that the 7 podcasts that we'll have probably by the end of this year, maybe 8, and we'll give you the top 5.
Yeah.
Hey. So, or we could just flat out give you our favorite movies of the year.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that for our maybe we'll do a something towards the end of the year where we'll just kind of, instead of doing our pick or pass, we'll just kind of give off our top 5 favorite films of the year or something. Who knows? But anyway, speaking of top films and things that you can watch before the end of the year, we're going to stick up a few movies up on the screen right about now for you guys to check out. Right there. These are films that are coming out in theaters, or you guys can get them on demand or physical copies of them. Here's your list. Ooh, fantastic. Or, ooh, fantastic. Depending on where they're at on my screen. Because I look at this thing and it's like mirrored and I don't have a clue where it's at. Anyway, that's why we do that. Anyway, next up, we like to do a little segment we call Real Life Horror Stories. And I probably messed it up because I always do. But anyway, I have a story that I found for this week. A St. Petersburg teacher, 35-year-old Danielle Harkins, she was teaching at the Lealman, an Asian neighborhood family center in Florida. Of course, it's Florida.
Okay.
She was going through a divorce and custody battle over her 2 young children. Soon after her divorce was finalized in 2012, she began acting strangely. And she developed a fanatical interest in religion, in angels and demons in particular.
Okay.
She showed up at one of her fellow teachers' house one day, telling her, "You're okay. You don't have any demons." So that teacher didn't have to worry.
Good to know.
On June 9th, on June 9th, 2012, Danielle got a group of her students to join her, and they created a small bonfire near the St. Petersburg Pier. The students thought that the teacher had planned a campfire evening for them, but then they were completely shocked when she started accusing them of being infested with demons, and commanded that they be exorcised right then and there. Confused and shaken, they half-heartedly followed her instructions to dance around the fire while chanting, but then drew the line when Harkins told them to cut themselves in order to free the demons.
What?
She became then infuriated by their refusal, and then she doused one of the students' hands in perfume and set them on fire.
Oh my gosh, what the heck?
She then slashed another student with a broken bottle and then cauterized their wounds with a key, like a house key, that she had heated in the fire. She then proceeded to force several others to cut themselves and then to close the wounds in a similar sort of fashion to keep the demons out. It took several days for some of the students to finally speak up about the incident. And even after the teacher was arrested, a lot of the students weren't terribly forthcoming with their information, and she refused to provide any details whatsoever. She was released from prison after only serving 6 months.
Figures.
Florida!
Wow.
Religion. Florida and religion. That's a good mix.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man. That lady's still out there, man.
Wow. That's
no one. I mean, they don't say anything about whether she got any sort of help or if she's still believing that way or has her own church. But she's,
oof! Wow, that's crazy.
That's which I should have saved that one for next week's.
Oh yeah,
for next week's film, but I didn't. Yeah. But before we tell you guys what's on next week's film, we like to do another little segment real quick before we close out. This is our week's pick or pass, movie that we've watched within the past week or somewhere around there, and we'll let you guys know whether or not you should pick it up or pass on it. Shane, we'll start with you, sir.
All right. Well, this week I've got a pick, and it's going to sound a little weird at first here. It's actually an entire YouTube channel.
Okay.
It is Gemini.
I did that on our first
It is
episode.
Gemini Home Entertainment.
Okay.
And this, I don't know how many there are on here. There's not very many. The videos are a series of extremely short films, and they take
like, what do you mean by extremely
short?
So
most of them are. I don't think none of them even reach 10 minutes. On average, you're looking at like 5 minutes of each.
5 to 7.
Yeah, something like that. And they take on a sort of, it's like they are old, like VHS, like educational or, those type videos. And just as an example, the very first one is called World's Weirdest Animals.
Okay. Oh, I've seen these.
Okay. And so
I've seen some of
these.
It
starts out, where, like this first one, it starts out where it's just shows you a couple of animals, that are, kind of, a little bizarre. They're like one of them's an owl. There's some other sort of chicken or a rooster or something.
Yeah.
And then it switches over to another animal that can be found everywhere. And they call it wood crawlers. And these things, you don't really get a good look at what it is, but they prefer to nest in homes with large families. And then you see some home video footage, and it talks about how, make sure to burn them lest they stand up again. You know, every one of these videos starts out somewhat normal. Storm safety tips starts out somewhat normal before kind of descending into a little bit of bonkers. There's a camp informational video that starts out fine and then kind of gets a little weird, you know, and there's actually an ongoing story throughout the whole thing, throughout all the videos. I just highly recommend them because they are very well done. They really do look like they could have been made like back in the 80s or something as some sort of like VHS, you know, like one of those informational videos you would see on loop at like the camp information video. You might see that on loop at the campground, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where all the videos start out kind of, you know, fine. Games for kids to play, you know, tag, stuff like that, and then send your friend out into the woods. You know, they descend into kind of weirdness, and then the series as a whole really, really gets messed up. So yeah, it's I highly recommend checking these out. Like I said, you're looking at an average watch time of like 5 minutes per video. It's Gemini Home Entertainment, and yes, that's my pick of the week. Highly recommended.
Nice. Yeah, I forgot that you had sent me that link.
Yeah, I've sent you this before.
Yeah. Well, my movie for this week is actually a film that was called Beyond the Gates. It came out in 2016. It kind of goes. It's not necessarily along what you were talking about, but it does go into like 80s style home video type thing. But it's a story about two brothers whose dad owned a video store, but the dad ended up going missing. And the two brothers are kind of brought together by, you know, having to close up the dad's video store. And while they're closing it up, they find a game, kind of Jumanji-esque, where there's a VHS tape that they put into a VCR, and this woman comes up onto the screen. It's Barbara Crampton from Reanimator, and she is giving them instructions on how to play this game. But now that they've started it, they can't leave the game, and if they want to find their father, they have to finish the game.
Okay.
So anyway, them along with one of their friends, who's played by Bria Grant.
Okay, I've seen this.
Yeah. They all get sucked into this game where they have to fight for their lives in order to get out. It's like a horror Jumanji for adults, but great movie. Yeah. Loved it.
A little goofy, but it was a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a pick. Kind of a throwback to an 80s style film. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. So check it out. It's called Beyond the Gates. You guys can find it on demand somewhere. But you can, I believe, Amazon or iTunes. You can get it on there. Yeah. So anyway, that's my pick for this week. So check it out. Yeah. What are we watching next week, sir?
All right. Well, next week we are breaking down a movie called The Exorcism of God.
Yeah, this one is a one of those not what would you call it? What would the genre be? This is a
I mean, it's one of those like religious supernatural things. I mean, I don't know. I had actually never heard of this movie until you brought it up to me. But it looks pretty good. So we'll check it out. And it's a little older, so you know we've been doing a whole bunch of like newish movies. This one,
well, we want to throw some stuff out that you guys may not have seen.
Yeah.
So some stuff that may have passed by your radar without getting the recognition it should get. So anyway, this one came across my path, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we gotta talk about this."
Yeah, it looks good.
So, anyway, The Exorcism of God. That'll be next week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you guys did, or even if you didn't, make sure you guys go down, like, and subscribe below. Leave us a comment, too, on any movies that you guys want to see, and also on Don't Worry, Darling, because I would love to talk that one through with somebody. So that one would be for the future, maybe. But anyway, make sure you guys hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell while you're down there. Leave any sort of comments, leave any sort of hate mails. We've got an email address. Send boobs. I don't care. Do whatever. So you're like, he's like, did he say that? Anyway, yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm Chris Mess.
I'm Shane. We'll see you next week.
Get the hell out of here. See you guys.